our success talks today, we're going to have Jason, and he's going to give us 30 practice tips in 30 minutes. So Jason Jason's a 2008 Yosan alumni. He's an author, teacher, and board licensed acupuncturist. He's certified in nutrition, infinity energy healing, Qigong, and Tai Chi. Jason utilizes a wide range of modalities in his clinical practice. He joined Dow Wellness in 2009 and was asked to expand the practice to Orange County in 2011. There, he specializes in integrative reproductive medicine, integrated oncology, pain, inflammation, and anti-aging medicine. Jason is a contributor to positivelypositive.com, thestalkmagazine.com, cycleharmony.com, and myhealthyoc.com. The author of Meditation for Emotional Detoxification, and co-author of Arthritis, Secrets of Mental Healing. So give him a warm round of applause.
Hi everybody.
Hi.
Welcome. Everyone's in between classes. We have like a 6 o'clock. It's okay. That's how I set this up. All right. So we're going to kind of blast into some content here, first half hour, and then as much time that we have left, we want to build off of whatever that sparks in you, ideas that you have about, what you're going to do when you're done with your time here. Is anyone, I know one alumni here. Any other alumni here? 2, all right. Cool. 3, almost. Wonderful. Well, this applies to everyone. And so thank you for that introduction. And a quick kind of recap. Yeah, I started here in 2005 and got married, had my first kid, and then finished a term early, which I don't necessarily recommend. And then took my tests and started Dow Wellness Fellowship in early 2009. Was there for 2 years, moved to Orange County, and have been there for 5 years. But in the next 3 months, I'm actually moving my family of 4 to the Portland area to, for the very first time, start my own practice. So it's, for a lot of my peers and friends I met here who, graduated and started their own business, they had a learning curve much steeper than mine because I had this employment opportunity where I learned in a very different way. And it was wonderful in its own way. In fact, if there's a time before your class, or you can always contact me later, if anyone's remotely or excitedly interested in the Dow Wellness Fellowship, I'm happy to talk to you about it later. But before I leave Southern California, I basically put this together because this is the thing that I wish somebody had done when I was there. And I mean, it's not news that we don't spend a ton of time here at school learning about marketing and business because clearly we're busy with everything else. And unless we have a personal background, a career, or experience, running some other business, there's a lot of like, oh, I've just graduated, now I went from being a student to being a sole proprietor of something. Who here has a desire to do this full time? Most. And so who's planning on juggling this with maybe another career or wants to do kind of part-time? Okay, cool, wonderful. Both paths can lead to success. And my interests were to do this as much as possible, as densely as possible, to learn as much as possible, to be as good as possible. And now I get to start that learning curve of being my own person. But before I get into the first quarter of our hour together, let's blast into the content. We're going to be jumping around kind of different topics. And as much as you can, save your questions, and I'll try to get to them at the end. This is organized in really 3 sections. This is organized around connecting with people, because that's what we do all day, is we connect with people. Patients, other allied health practitioners, our families, we go home ourselves. So all of the first dozen or so are really around connecting with people. So we'll jump into that. By this point, you've already determined if me standing up here has any value to offer you. You've already made that up in your mind. And that's because of how I'm positioning my body, how I'm talking to you, what I've decided to put on today. These are all conscious decisions that when we come out of school, we need to start thinking about, because that's going to affect our first impression on anyone we meet. So really about holding your body, posture, the physical postures we take with our body and our face, or the mental postures we have with our intention to better ourselves or better our patients. Very important. Go around tired and slouched all the time, and that might be a little bit of a turnoff to, well, anyone. So coming out of school, there might be some rebuilding necessary, but this is a very simple thing that we can all do right away. Marketing. Getting yourself in front of people, as I am right now, is probably the most important thing you can do as a practitioner outside of your office. There's plenty of techniques and tools to use online and other print and electronic media, but word of mouth is really what builds most of people's practices out there. And if your patients aren't doing it for you, as they should be, hopefully you are getting out into the world and doing things like this, getting out in front of people for every potential reason. And if that sounds scary to anyone, this might be a little bit of a wake-up call. It might be a good idea to try to do things that are scary. I didn't come out of the gate, feeling comfortable in my skin and my voice and whatever other self-judgments I had about the way in which I present myself. But with experience, needling gets better, talking gets better, the butterflies calm down, all that stuff. And I should say at this point that some of the stuff I'm going to share, totally old hat to most of us, but as a good reminder. Some of this stuff is going to totally make sense, but maybe you hadn't thought of it before. Some of what I share might be totally opposing to what you have kind of generating in your heart, and to have a totally different opinion is totally fine. But hopefully I can at least spark some of those inner conversations for you. Personal questions. This is better told with a story. Most of you don't know me, but when I came out of this program, in doing it a bit too fast, I entered into a multi-year bout with chronic fatigue, which thankfully this medicine slowly brought me out of. But in my running around to every practitioner of every kind to help me, ran into a doctor and her partner, who I had never met before, came into the room. Hi, Jason, my name is Dr. So-and-so, this is my assistant. One or two questions. Chronic fatigue, okay. Did you have a lot of sex recently? And I'm like, I don't get easily embarrassed with these kind of questions. I expect it as a medical student, but I thought that's kind of a turn off. I just met you and you're like plowing into my sex life, in like 5 seconds flat. And again, didn't mind it, but it was a turn off. Didn't see that doctor again. It didn't really feel right. And so we can slow ourselves in moving toward those questions that do meant to be asked, but maybe we don't do them right after we introduce ourselves. Maybe we can do a little physical contact first. Maybe we can ask a general question rather than like, how many positions are you in? It's a little much. So, work your way into it slowly, these necessary questions. On the topic of touch, very, touchy subject, unintended. I'm a big hugger. I hug as many people as I can, but I'm getting pretty good to realize, when I shouldn't be doing that. I would say that physical contact is really, really important. Clearly, you're going to be having your hands all over many people's bodies, and so if we can't, in the way of touching somebody on their shoulder, on their knee, on their back, these sort of more or less safe zones, and that's a very good thing. Clearly, any awkward, slow, prolonged stroking anywhere might send the wrong message, so we don't want to do it. But I'm a big fan of hugging. Referrals. This is actually one of the ones that I'm most proud of, because it does work. So you've got a patient on the table, and you've already established a good connection with them, and they go, this acupuncture thing, it's doing something for me, and then their brains start flickering around. I've got a mother-in-law, a friend. Jason, do you treat psoriasis? I haven't heard anything. Do you treat that? And rather than just saying yes, and then you might want to go forward a little bit. And the biggest thing is when they say, my mother-in-law got psoriasis and the story, and can you do something for them? And I say, yeah, why don't you, give them my phone number. What's their name? When you ask their name, this does a couple different things. When you are now responsible for this person's name, the patient is saying, they have my mother-in-law's name now. I better follow through because he's expecting a phone call. So they're follow through with the referral. At the same time, me, with that person's name, clearly when that person calls, I'll have a background to the story and can follow up on that. That's huge because it happens all the time. People come in skeptical, they're dragged in by their wives or whatever. You have a wonderful first impression, and then they start thinking of other people that can be helped in this way. And then if you can get a bit more personal and asking about their name, maybe the background story, then that story becomes more yours as well, and that referral is much more going to happen. Sensitive topics. This is a little bit like the personal questions one, but so I do a lot of fertility work, and we end up talking a lot about sex, and I meet these people for the first time, so rather than just punching to it, I do need some important information. And so what's your cycle like, and I'll usually look at my paper, do you have any difficulty with orgasm, yes, no, da, da. So when you get the information that you need, it might be a sensitive topic, focus on what you're doing. As a man, mostly speaking to females, I tend not to pry with my eyes when I ask these things. But it's, of course, as a learning newer practitioner, you might be thinking like, literally, what positions hurt? Because that's the problem, right? And you might need more information. But be careful about how fast you move through it, and maybe you don't intently stare in their eyes too long while you're doing this stuff, because again, you might throw them off. So be proactive with that, but don't be too invasive. Okay, contacting. This is another interesting one. Most practitioners of all kinds, you call them when their office is open, right? Well, the exact opposite of that would be, what about being available all the time, 24 hours a day? That sounds pretty awful to a lot of people, but it sounds pretty doable to a lot of people. Frankly, in the last 7 years, that's been part of our practice at Dow of Wellness. We share this after-hours phone. And sounds annoying, practically, it's actually not very. And we sell it every single time we meet a new patient. Say we've got 11 of us now in our group. Somebody's on call 24 hours a day. If you need something, we're here to support you to hit these healing objectives we talked about. You say, wow, that's amazing. Veritably, nobody takes advantage of that. And when they do, that 1, 2 a.m. call, maybe a couple times a year. I mean, it's really minimal. In fact, that's not a necessity, but it's a way of going about things. I haven't decided if I'm going to do that or not yet after I move. But one interesting thing, before I moved to the Pacific Northwest, I decided to do a little marketing research. I called over 200 acupuncture practices in the area just to see what it was like. And I had no idea how informative that little chore line was. The biggest and most obvious problem was I called between 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Monday through Friday, and only 30% of people, I only got a human being 30% of the time. It was incredibly annoying. As a prospective patient, I plan on getting acupuncture, and nobody's answering their phone. And clearly there's a lot of part-time practitioners, so that's part of the issue. But be available, or else you might lose out on the patient. When you receive a referral, one might be more obvious. You might want to thank the person. Thank them with a note in the mail. Put in your marketing material, business card. When that referral comes to you from any kind of health practitioner, MD or otherwise, I highly recommend writing a form letter to them, possibly even going into detail about your findings or treatment objectives for that person who is coming to see you. That's going to clearly show your gratitude, and it also informs the referrer, that their advice was in fact taken, and again allows for cross referrals between you and any MD when you guys are actually talking. Second page. Referring. When you send somebody out to see that amazing body worker down the street, and then you just say, and then you just forget about it, that you could be missing out on a really wonderful opportunity there. After you refer out to somebody, allow that patient to come back. You might even ask them, hey, did you ever see that psychotherapist I told you about? And they say, yeah, she's wonderful. I've had, half a dozen awful therapy experiences over my entire life, and this one finally is great. This then is another opportunity for you to, thank this doctor for taking care of your charge, so that you can both collaborate on their care. And again, more opportunities for cross-referring because you're talking. A couple on scheduling. This first one is more like the, I think of Apple, the company, who have really perfected the art of scarcity, which is why every 2 years, everyone with their iPhones in their pockets goes to get a new iPhone but waits in line for a week beforehand, right? Because they only make so many of them. And when they only make so many of them, everyone wants it first. Everyone wants it, right? But if you, like on the phone, say, you know what, come in whenever you want, 8, 9, 10, 11 a.m., 1, 2, 3 o'clock p.m., whenever, when do you want to come in? And they go, nobody's eating at your restaurant, are they? Do I want to eat there? So even if you've got nobody coming in, only offer 2 appointments, as an example. It connotes you're busy. It connotes demand. It pressures the patient to act, to see you. If they know they can see you whenever, well then I'm going to prioritize my cleaning pickup, my kids pickup, and maybe I'll call them back 10 days from now. You want to put a little gentle pressure by offering limited availability. If there's a lot of back and forth, those 2 times don't work. Well, what about tomorrow at 1? Well, if that doesn't work, you know what? I have a wait list. Why don't we put you on my wait list? Even if you've got nobody coming in, this is a strategy. Maybe it sounds weird. I'm going to put you on my wait list, and then what happens is you've, gotten them the idea that you're busy, and maybe an hour later you call them back, hey, we just got an opening. It's one way to work the system. I tell you, it works. Yeah.
I have a question.
Sure. There's no question.
What's your take on, people who call and they want it right now? Like, I need to see you now, or else, they hang up the phone and they go somewhere else.
Sure.
There's a lot of that. How do you handle those?
No, that's a good question. And we can talk about that for a while, but quickly. There's 2 ways to do that. Number one, hey, we're in the business of caring for people, get them in there. But there are those that only operate on that last minute kind of thing. And so I want to come in right now, and then 10 minutes later they will cancel because, oh, I'm in traffic. Or 10 minutes, that's just people. There are those types. And I've had, half a dozen of those in the last year or so. And you begin to work with those in a very specific way. Those people who are doing everything last minute. If you've tried and they haven't come in a few times, I tend to only I say, you know what, why don't you call when you're an hour away? And I make the window even smaller, so that if they're on the block, they can come in. If not, then they got to figure it out some other time. Thank you. The next one is my sort of busy restaurant idea again. When you distribute your appointments really far away from one another, you got one person coming in at 10:30, another one at 2, nobody in between. That's fine if you want to practice that way. But if you're able to practice where there's people back to back to back, then again you get that busy restaurant effect. Hey, people are eating at this restaurant, I might want to come back. Every 15 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever it is in your practice, people see each other coming and going, your practice is busy, and they get to interact with one another. It's amazing when you hang out in a market or a city for a while, how small the world becomes, because it's, oh my God, you go here too? That happens all the time. I'm like, I didn't know you knew them, and there's all kinds of triangulating, and that's fun. That's really fun when that happens, because people will meet in the lobby, and then the third party is like sitting there in the lobby going, oh wow, this is a really communal place, and it really bleeds from there. It's really nice when that happens. This is a huge one. This is also a really big one. Burnout. We want to make sure that everyone's doing this for as long as you want, whether it's 5 years until you become sushi chef, or for the, which is what I thought about sometimes. No, I like this too much. I like this too much. Maybe when my needle, no. Or you want to do this for the rest of your life. This is really the sympathy-empathy argument that for the 15 minutes that I've got that, young boy in my office, he's my son. He's my son for 15 minutes. When I've got that 75-year-old man, he's my father for that 15 minutes. Nobody else is more important than that person. This is my wife for 30 minutes. I've got to take care of them with all of my being. But I have to save my energy, right? I have to save my energy. I have to know my own boundaries. This is hard to explain and is a total core issue for us as healers. But this is something that you might want to start thinking about more regularly, because this will enable you to really go the distance and learn versus, getting tired. If you find after a day of seeing 4 patients or 40 patients, it doesn't matter. If you find that after your day is done and you are just pooped, maybe you're doing too much. And maybe it doesn't mean seeing less people. Maybe it means doing a little bit less. So there's just less and more balance. It's really difficult, unique to everyone, but start to think about this, that you are sharing of your interest, but your energy is, for yours to figure out what that limit is. Another note on referrals. This is the idea that, most practices, really only allow you to engage with the doctor when you're in their system, after you started coming in. You can ask all the questions you want, and even then people are, really hard to get back to you sometimes. Hopefully in this room we do a little bit better than that, but even pushing that further is, this isn't a radical idea, but allowing people to call you and ask questions and interview you before they're in your system, before they've seen you the first time. Hey, my mother-in-law's got psoriasis. Do you treat that? Yes, I do. What's her name? You do that whole thing. And then you tell them, have them call me anytime, even before they're a patient. They can interview me, they can make sure I'm not a crazy person, they can ask me all the technical questions they want, which takes a lot of weight out of that first physical meeting they're going to have with you, where they're trying to gauge if you're weird and if you can help them. If you can take a little bit of that pressure off sometime beforehand in a setting like this personally or over the phone, that's going to help so many people decide that you're the person they want to see before they've even seen you. Isn't that amazing? It's great. Moving that even further, because some people don't even want to take the 1 minute to make that phone call. You can say, you know what, and if your mother-in-law is, sick or busy or whatever it is, if she's open to it, I'm happy to call her too. So maybe that daughter is in your office and she said it's fine, here's the phone number, give her a call. That's great. Last one is also a big one, listening. I'm a fairly verbose person, and I can go at length with my mouth. But being present, showing up is probably is really the most important thing you do. Being a nice person is important. Making sure that you're good at this is, of course, crucial. Making sure that your technique is good so people aren't, bleeding and vomiting all over the place. That's important. But if you're just there on a schedule that is expected and are there to receive somebody's trauma, even if you make them bleed and vomit, they're going to come back, because they will give you another opportunity because you're there for them, physically and energetically, to receive. And specifically to the American culture, that's very, very important. A lot of Americans, I believe, have few opportunities to fully be heard and received, which is why I feel psychotherapy is like the best and most scapegoated thing that we've got going. In fact, I think psychotherapists and us working incredibly well together. I was actually going to put something on here about those that I feel work the best with us. Well, I might as well say my personal opinion is that I'm moving to an area where there's an acupuncturist on every single block who's sharing a building with, in fact, I'm currently in negotiations to buy a practice in a building that has a chiropractor, naturopath, and basically everyone you're competing with, right? But they're wonderful, friendly people. It's not going to bother me too much. But I feel it's wonderful to work with those people who you have absolutely no common interest with, like psychotherapists, like surgeons, like physical therapists, those that interact like this. Then it's just cross-referring like crazy. But where we're all doing something somewhat similar, I'm not sure that happens in a lot of those instances where we feel like, hey, there's a lot of similarity here, we can kind of jive together, and I could be totally wrong about that depending on who you're working with. The next handful here is really about taking charge and leading your patient in the right direction, because if that's not happening and they lose confidence in you, they're going to stop coming. Treatment frequency. This is kind of a big one. When you are first meeting with somebody and you as a smart person realize there's a branch and a root to deal with here, and you want to educate them on this whole thing in the first 30 to 60 minutes, number one, their eyes are going to start glossing over, and they're going to start to realize, I'm not sure he's focused on my chief complaint anymore. But that's the most important when they first meet you, right? Solve their problem as quickly as possible. Make anything happen as quickly as possible. Then you start to educate them on the chronic root problem that are causing their symptom. So rather than what I literally used to do when I first practiced would be like, this is going to be a 3-month thing, come once a week. And then, when you're better, then just come for the rest of your life, a little less frequently. I didn't say that too much. But now it's really about honing in. This chief complaint, I need to see you frequently, a couple times a week, first couple weeks, and then we're going to reevaluate. I want you to see some change by then. Even if that has nothing to do with their chief complaint, I still sort of have that headache, but my God, my wrist feels better. Well, I have no idea why, and you're the only different thing I did in these last few weeks. Then their interest grows, and then you can educate them more. Taking time off, very crucial. Please do it. When you do it smartly, which would not be to say, I'm going to take off now, bye, see you in a couple weeks, and leave it at that. You definitely want to plan it, because each and every time you are not there regularly every week, people will stop to see you. It's what happens to everybody. But there's a way to minimize this. You're essentially interrupting your customers, clients, patients' schedule by not being there. You're not being present, which is by no means an argument to not vacation. Please take vacation, please do it. But when you do, consider having somebody cover for you. Even if it means you're the patient who loves you more than anything, is I would never see anyone else. Never. But then when you say, you know what, I am more interested in the regularity of your care, please see my partner next week. He's going to take good care of you. And what you want to do is you tell them to make an appointment with that person, and in that same instance you say, make another appointment to see me after I come back. And by the way, I get pretty busy after I come back after a trip, so you might want to make that appointment now. So what that does is you've basically taken care of their schedule and their life. And you might want to get that person who's covering for you to reiterate. You better make an appointment with Jason next week. He gets busy after he takes even if I don't. You want to take control of their schedule. If you don't, there they are, and they're going to go away. It happens sometimes. A lot of times it doesn't, but it's better to be safe. And really, this does enable you to keep caring for them. Asking for help. Clearly, you don't ever want to say, I can cure everything. I'm not sure anyone said that. I hope not. When you feel you've gotten to a place where you're hitting an educational roadblock, it's a really good thing to start asking for help. I'm going to refer you to this specialist down the street, get this other little thing taken care of, and we're going to actually coordinate your care. You're going to get a lot of respect from the patient because of your foresight to do that, and not to be a bit too greedy with their time, money, or your own maybe ego, in that you can cure everything. Being able to work with others, again, enables cross-referring between you and the other practitioner, and again allows the patient to know that you're thinking of their best interest and not your own. Draping. This is just a quick little, for those of you that have bodywork experience, this isn't going to be new. But when doing anything with people's bodies, and as fertility, I'm working on a lot of women's lower bellies on their uteruses all day long, and as a man, I can't really dilly-dally or I'm going to send the wrong message. You basically want to take someone else's clothes as if they are your own. Move them as if they are your own, without being aggressive. But when you go home tonight, just watch how you take your clothes off. I don't know, maybe you do it slowly, I don't know. But usually it's just, you're off to the next thing because you've done it every day for the rest of your life. Boom and boom, into the shower, whatever it is. And so, hey, how's it going? Oh, we're going to lower these. Is that okay? Okay, downward here, and then you go get your needles and off you go. The slow, unconfident butterfinger is going to send a lot of people the wrong message. And I don't know if I want their hands on me, that kind of thing. That comes with practice. You'll probably figure that out if you do it a couple times and you go, that didn't feel good for me. Probably didn't feel good for them. I better be more confident with my hands. Think of yourself. How do you take off your own pants? How would you lower them for a doctor? Do the same on the patient. When you have done wrong, failure, when the patient feels like you've messed up, or when the patient has stopped coming and they think you've messed up, whether or not you've messed up, or for some reason you feel like you failed. This is a very interesting thing where many people will see TCM still to this day as this weird foreign thing. You know what, I tried it once, didn't work for me, so I'm doing something else. But you realize how that never happens anywhere else? Like, that medical doctor, he didn't really work for me, so I'm never going to see a medical doctor again. Or that sandwich my order was wrong, I'm never going to eat again. But why with acupuncture? Because we're still a little bit on the fringe. So you have to educate the person, you know what? Every acupuncturist is different. Every sandwich maker is different. I hope my sandwich tastes good, right? So that will happen on the flip side. Somebody will be in your office. I saw this acupuncturist. He didn't speak a lot of English, and he shoved him really deep, and it hurt a lot. And I'm only here because my wife dragged me up. I'm like, I'm really sorry for your experience. And then you educate them on different needle techniques or whatever it is, and tell them that everyone's different. And if you didn't like that person, I'm glad you're trying TCM again. Get that person on the phone. I'm really sorry you had that experience with me. Feel free to, move on from me, but please don't give up on Chinese medicine. Please see somebody else. Here's 3 names. That was something else I should have put on here. Tip number 31, phone calls. You absolutely should be calling everybody who stops seeing you. Absolutely everyone. I have a practice, and I've been doing this pretty much since I started. I call anyone who hasn't seen me, who isn't currently on my schedule for the previous 2 to 3 months. I'll go through my entire schedule. Hey, that person didn't come in. I have my stack of files. I call all of them every single month. And in the back of your head, you might be thinking, well, that's sort of a greedy move or pushy or whatever. It's never that way in the patient's eyes. 99.5% of the time, that person on the receiving end is thrilled that you even thought of them to call them. Thank you so much for calling, Jason. That's it touched my heart that you reached out in that way. That's humongous. I should have put that on here. And in fact, hi, come on in. Before I ever thought about doing Chinese medicine, I was a patient here at the clinic downstairs, and I was floored after my first treatment with Ferran. Amazing Ferran. Great acupuncture, bad jokes. I loved him. He was great. First meeting with him, and I'm sure it's still practice here, common practice. He called me the next day. Oh my God, he called me the next day? A doctor's never called me the next day. That blew my world apart. And I saw him for a year and eventually thought about doing this for a career, but I take so much joy in calling all these people that I meet every week that next day or two. How often is that happening? Never. It's never happening. You're really surprising people when you reach out, whether they're a new patient or they've already given up on you. When progress is slow, you definitely don't want to just keep things going without any mention of anything, unending treatments with nothing altering. You definitely want to change it up. This is where you're going to manage patient expectations. You might refer them for a second opinion. You might change your strategy. You might add another formula. You might have them come in more or less often, and you can pretty much always explain it as a way to strengthen their treatment. you know what, things aren't working. This isn't moving, you're not moving as forward as quickly as I'd like. We need to do something different. We need to strengthen things. I'm going to give you a second formula. I need you to come in twice as much for the next month. When you make that change, they go, oh, he's taking care of things. I don't have to question things. This is an enormous pet peeve of mine, which I remember, doing myself as an intern, and still sometimes hearing my peers doing this. I don't think a practitioner should ever be asking the patient whether they feel herbs is right for them, whether they feel, what do you think about coming in more often? What do you think about that? Like, don't do that. What do you think about trying herbs this time? What do you think about it? Don't ask the patient. You should be telling the patient. You should be taking charge. When you ask the patient, it connotes you're not sure. I don't know. Make the recommendations. I want to see you twice a week for 3 months because of this incredible. I saw 2 days ago. He had tongue cancer. Radiation. Thankfully, no more cancer. But his whole tongue and mouth and throat and swallowing and digestion, it's just wrecked. And I said, this isn't, he had heard great things about another one of my patients. He said, I hear you're a miracle worker. That's why I'm here. I don't want to see anyone else, whatever it is. I said, you know what, this is going to take a while. I don't know how